Hello, good afternoon, everybody. I've just getting used to the technical issues here, so I can see that I've been live for 42 seconds. I'm sorry if there's been a slight delay in my starting. My name's Heather McGregor. I'm a professor at Heriot-Watt University, but the reason that I'm here today chairing this session is because, first of all, I was myself very honoured to be the recipient of an honour in 2015 when I received my CBE for services to diversity and particularly diversity in the workplace. And the second thing is that since 2017, I've had almost the even greater honour of sitting on the Honours Committee myself. I come to the end of my second 3-year term at the end of this year. I sit on the Honours Committee for the Economy, which considers nominations from people in all walks of life who are involved in business. And it's those two encounters with the honour system as a recipient and as someone who's been involved in it that I'm leading this discussion. And I hope that you will find it interesting. I hope you will find it informative. I hope it will blow away some of the myths. I've had so many myths that people have told me about the honour system, that it was only for certain people, not true, that only certain people can nominate, not true. So I hope all of those kind of myths will get blown away today. And you will hear instead things that will encourage you to participate and to nominate, which is what we would really love to see. And in particular, we would love to see more diversity and in our nominations. So the recent birthday list that was published just before the Jubilee weekend was one of the most diverse yet. And we've made really significant progress in ensuring that the honours lists are proportionally representative of UK society and include people from all backgrounds. And when I say diversity, I mean diversity in the widest possible sense. So diversity of background, diversity of ethnic minority, diversity of gender, diversity in all forms is what we want to have and to celebrate in the honours lists. And the diversity in the most recent list continues to be over the 10% target for people from non-white backgrounds, which was the target that we were set in 2014. And I really hope that this event will encourage you to think about nominating somebody that you know, particularly if they come from a diverse background. What I love is the Cabinet Office's sign off. The people in the Cabinet Office who work on the honours list have a lovely sign off that says, do something amazing for somebody amazing, and nominating is the amazing thing you could do. So I'm going to start by inviting my panelists one at a time to join me and to speak about their own experience of the honour system, and also to explain to you who they are, which I'm sure they will do better than me. But I can tell you that all of our panelists today are themselves absolutely amazing people. And I'd like to start by introducing Professor Lee Elliott Major, who is a professor of social mobility and the former CEO of the Sutton Trust. So, Lee, would you like to join me and introduce yourself to everyone?
I hope you can all see me. Good. It's come on. I'm as technically gifted as you, Heather, on these things. So I was given an honour in the 2009 Queen's Birthday Honours, an OBE, and it really was services for social mobility. So my, I guess, life's passion really is to improve opportunities for people from all backgrounds. So particularly looking at socioeconomic background in particular. We know from all the studies that we've been involved in over the years that sadly in this country, your background does shape your success, however defined. So there's lots of work to do on that. I, particularly at that point, I was CEO of the Sutton Trust education charity. And I'm very proud to say that, we raised millions of pounds to help tens of thousands of young people to get into university and apprenticeships. So I think it was that practical side of what I was doing as well as the sort of research. When I actually got the award, I was the country's first professor of social mobility. So since the trust, I still dedicate my life to this passion of mine. So yeah, it was a real honour, as you say, to get that award. We might get into it later, but interesting, there was sort of mixed reaction among my friends and colleagues to it because you'd think the concept of social mobility might be against the sort of idea of being awarded an honour, but so we might get into that a bit. But yeah, no, it was one of the proudest days of my life.
All right. And was that the day you collected it or the day you got the letter?
So the day I got the letter, I have to say, I thought it was a scam or someone joking. I think you probably get this a lot, and
it comes in a very official envelope, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think I got a phone call and sort of say, would you be minded to sort of receive this if you, and so one thing I was going to say, I myself am the first in my family to go into university. I lived on my own at 15. So I think I still suffer a bit, to be frank, from imposter syndrome. When I turned up at Buckingham Palace for my medal, Prince Charles was there. I still had this sense of someone maybe tapping me on the shoulder and saying, "Lee, you shouldn't be here," and that stays with you, unfortunately. I mean, it's part of who I am. But I'm fortunate to say that I did get the award. No one told me to leave, and it was a great occasion. But yeah, so very, very proud to have had that honour.
Lovely. Well, thank you very much indeed. And I'd now like to invite Lem Sisse, who, amongst many other things, of course, is the Chancellor of the University of Manchester, but is probably more famous to all of us as a poet and an author. So, Lem, would you like to join us and to share your experiences of the honours system?
Can you hear me? You can hear me?
I can hear you. I can also see you.
I do apologise. When people say that on a microphone, can you hear me? They don't realise that the people who can't hear them are the people who can't hear them. In other words, when you ask, can you hear me, you other people who have hearing difficulties.
You do. Anyways, that's a very ableist perspective. I agree.
Absolutely. So it's a very interesting way of showing people how people can exclude somebody without meaning it. My name is Lem Sisse, and I am a poet, and I received my MBE from the Queen in 2010, and I received an OBE from Prince Charles in 2022. I am Chancellor of the University of Manchester. I've been a poet by trade since from the age of 21 to the present, full-time as a poet and creative in literature. My award, my MBE, was given to me for services to literature, and my OBE was given to me in 2022, services to literature and what was the other charity? So I'm trustee of various organisations, the Foundling Museum in the middle of Bloomsbury, the University of Manchester, where I'm also Chancellor, and the Gold from the Stone Foundation, who put on Christmas dinners for care leavers between the ages of 18 and 25 on Christmas Day. And wow. The reason I did that,
and so you were a double recipient, and that's very interesting in its own right. So, first of all, when you got your MBE, do you remember that? Do you remember what that thought? Did you ever question whether you should accept it? Was it
Well, I'm a poet by trade, and
there's not a ban on poets. You're not the only poet to be on it. It's not a a ban. I just wonder whether that affected how you viewed it.
So I mentioned that I was a poet by trade because Benjamin Zephaniah is probably the most famous person of my generation who turned down his MBE or OBE, and he wrote an article in The Guardian about it. And so as a poet, as a black poet, that you asked me how people reacted, I think.
First. How did you react?
Oh, how did I react?
Yes.
I was chuffed to bits. I mean... I was chuffed to bits, I was chuffed to bits, and then I was fully aware of the world that I'm in. I know as many people who have turned down their award as who have taken it. It's just that the people who've turned it down, quite a lot of the time, they don't mention it. They don't say. But if you ask around, you'll find that this person didn't take it, that person didn't take it. So I was chuffed to bits to have it myself, and it. Yeah, I mean, I wrote a blog where I said to people, what do you think I should do? I know what I should
Mm,
do, but I know what I should do, by the way, but what do you think I should do? It's very specific wording. And I all of those views that people have put forward are online, and most people just said, "Do it. It's a beautiful,
that's
beautiful
great.
thing," and it is. Yeah.
And so, before I move on to our next panelist, can I just ask one more question, which is about your double honour? So, when you got your OBE, when you
Yeah.
got the letter about your OBE, was that unexpected?
It's never, honestly, no award that I get is ever expected. I mean, wow.
No one leaked it to you in advance. Nobody mentioned it
I'm
to you in
not. I'm not.
advance.
I'm not from that. It's funny, isn't
Mm.
it? Because I feel like I'm not from that background where I feel. Yeah. No. No. I still don't know who has put me in it, up for it for any of the things that I've got. It's quite. It's for me. It was quite a challenge to. Uh, just to be able to see that somebody else thought I was any good.
Oh, well, we all think you're amazing. But that's the nice thing about doing something amazing for amazing people is that somebody nominated you, and both times somebody nominated you, and that's what we want is more
Yeah.
people to
Yeah.
do that, isn't it?
Yeah.
To do amazing things for other people, which I think
Yeah.
which is wonderful. If I could move on now and to invite Leon Mann, who is a sports consultant, a filmmaker, and a broadcaster, and of course, founder of the Football Blacklist. So, Leon, do you want to tell us a little bit about your own MBE? You know, how did that come about? Was the first you knew of it was the letter?
Yeah, I mean, I received my MBE or notification or by email because of COVID.
Oh,
So,
oh, right, okay, yes.
so I know that Lee mentioned earlier about feeling like it was a wind up. Well, by email, it definitely feels like a little bit of a wind up, and I certainly felt that might be the case. But no, I am a diversity consultant in sport and in the sports media. As you said, I founded campaigns helping to diversify the sports media and the football industry in particular. That's anchored in a context where we have many black athletes on the field of play, certainly in sports like football, in boxing, athletics. But when you look at who is running the sport, when you look at who is covering the sport as a journalist, we have like real kind of uncomfortable underrepresentation. And through my experience, both as an anti-racism campaigner for Kick It Out, which is where I started my career, moving to becoming a broadcaster for the BBC and ITV within sport, I was very uncomfortable with this dynamic that we had of underrepresentation. So started these different campaigns, which were basically about highlighting and amplifying black talent, building community and networks, and helping the wider industry to understand the beauty and the business benefits of diversity, and why we should be pushing down that road to enhance and help both our society and our businesses.
So, when you got your nomination, what was it for? Did it say it was for diversity?
Yeah, that's right. It's for diversity in sport. My wife also has an MBE. She got hers before me, so she beat me to it. It's
Well, there you
I
go.
equalised, so it's 1-1 now in the sporting context. But for me, yeah, it was a real honour to have it, and it's interesting listening into those conversations you've just had in terms of, do you accept it, and who do you have a conversation with? I think as a black person and some of the mixed heritage, for me, I think the struggle is with the E. it's with the
Yeah,
word.
I'd like, and that's something I'd like to come back to. I'd like to speak to our other two panelists, but then I think, right from the off, I think Lee mentioned this at the beginning, is maybe we should have a conversation about the E and about why that, but you still felt that you could accept it, which is fantastic, and you still, and it was still special for you.
Incredibly special for me, incredibly special to my family in particular. These honours are things that don't happen in my family, or haven't happened. I mean, I mentioned my wife's got one, but I'm talking about my side of the family, also her side of the family. But so really, it's about, for me, and I guess we might come on to this, it's what do you do with your honour?
Mm.
I think that's the question that pushed me towards, I have to accept this.
Mm. Well, thank you very much. And so I'd like to move now to Carly Jones, who is an autism campaigner and also a member of the Community and Voluntary Service Panel. So she knows lots about the honours system. But so, Carly, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your own experience with the honours system.
Okay, so my kind of life in the honour system started, I think it was the 24th. I'm autistic, I should add that. So I do know the date. It was 2:45 in the afternoon on the 24th of November 2017, where the letter landed on my doormat, and I was I cried a lot and completely bowled over. So my MBE was for services to the autistic community. I'm an autistic woman myself, have autistic daughters, although they're older now, and had been working incredibly hard to raise the awareness of autistic women and girls from around about 2008-ish. Actually, when I got the MBE, it was the investiture day was the best day of my life, without a shadow of a doubt. But what was most brilliant and what taught me the most about how, when an individual is recognised, the community they represent and the people that they aim and work really hard to safeguard, actually they're lifted. So that was the most important bit for me. Often, quite rightly, we see many people that help disabled people get recognised, and that's super important. But it's also incredibly empowering for other disabled women to see a disabled woman recognise themselves. So that was thrilling. I still don't feel I've earned it, which, coming back to Professor Lee's comment of, I lived in a homeless hostel at 15 and dropped out of education. I was a teen mum. So my daughters are in their 20s now. But so I also felt when I was getting the medal, actually on the day, that they're going to go, "Are you joking?" And I was really nervous. And it wasn't actually until Princess Royal put it on me that I thought, I now need to run before they change their mind. I'm not meant to be here. So I still don't feel that I've earned it, which I think was probably 50% of the reason I applied to sit on the Honours Committee itself for Community and Voluntary Service. I'd seen how it empowers a whole community, not just the individual. But also I felt, I better do some work now, because I still don't think that it's right that I've got it. So yes, I could talk about it for a long time, because I'm very passionate about the honours system, as they may have warned you, Heather.
Well, that's brilliant. I'm glad that we're all passionate about it, because so am I. However, I think we should ask our last panelist to join us now. Last, absolutely not least, Donna, I hope you are able to join technically, because I know we were having a bit of trouble earlier. And you have an OBE, and you're also, like Collie, you're also, and me, a member of one of the 9 honours committees, the Sports Honours Committee. So please do. Oh, we can't. Well, sadly, Donna can't join us. Right. Okay. So, in which case, Will, is it possible to have everybody back in here at the same time? Because I would like to address a couple of these things that we were mentioning earlier. And the idea, everybody, is that we're going to talk about these things between us at the moment, just to give you a bit more of an insight into them. But then we are going to leave time for questions at the end, and I'm sure that you will have questions, and you can submit those questions, I understand, in the chat, so that they can be fed to me later on. So I would like now to ask all of my panelists if they could suggest reasons why people might not nominate. And that this, I think this is separate to why people might not accept, but that I think we need to discuss as well. But I think, first of all, I would really love to have your views and opinions. And actually, I might start with the people who don't sit on a committee, like Collie and me, because we see all these nominations. But if I could sort of go back down the line, that reverse order, Leon, I wonder if you, you're in touch with lots and lots of people all the time who are doing amazing things. Why do other people not nominate them? I don't know if you ever nominated somebody.
No, I think it's a matter of awareness, which is why I was really interested in coming onto an event like this, because certainly within the Black community that I live within and experience, I mean, I still feel that there's a lack of understanding about the process. I think there's this magical sense of the Queen sits down and picks who she's going to have as part of the list every year. And I think, now, I understand this a bit more. I see it as part of my responsibility to help to raise awareness of this, because there are so many people in the community who are doing incredible things, changing lives, having a positive influence on society, that are not being nominated and should be. So by accepting this MBE, in my case, I really would like to amplify how you nominate. The fact that you started the session by saying anybody can be nominated, by anybody. I think that's really important to get out there for people who wish to celebrate people who are deserving of an honour, because it is such a special thing.
That's really good. And Lem, have you thought about that? I don't know. Have you nominated anybody? Have you ever done that, or have you encouraged people to make nominations ever? You're on silent. I hope that Will is who's driving this can take you off.
So
there you are.
I feel a bit bad now because I actually haven't.
That's all right. You don't have to feel bad. I want to encourage you all to do it.
I'll just out myself. But what I have done is there's somebody who I'm putting forward, and I've researched it, and I've gone online and I found the directions, I think, from the Cabinet Office, which are online for everybody to see.
They are.
And it is very clear process. It's very clear, and the more you understand the sentences, the more you realize actually there is to do. So I just put this out there. It's a very specific set of directions that were given from the Cabinet Office that are done very, very well.
Yes,
and they're done so well, so we can get over that bit. They're done so well that you realize, this is a bit of work, actually. Researching what this person has done, finding out precisely why they should receive, not because they're a good person, trying to find out what they've done and identify that, and then identify other people who are connected to what they've done, so that we can see the fruits of their labor. It's a bit of a research project.
So do you think that people don't nominate because it involves that much research, or because they don't know where to find the form? You had to find the form.
I think that the form's out there. So there's two things. One is the psychological feeling that I'm not good enough to nominate anybody, and who would listen to me anyway. That's something that I think I wasn't brought up for success. Like, it's really funny because it's very easy to go, oh no, that's not for me. Oh, I can't read it. Oh, it's too complicated. Oh, etc. And then give up on it and think, obviously it's not for me to do that. Actually, it is. And the way it's presented by the Cabinet Office is to say, we'll take you step by step through this process. And if you take those steps, then you'll be closer to forming an idea about the person that we can understand, the Honours Committee can understand from the nominator. I think we're just not used to giving. We're just not used to. Yeah, it's a shock for me to get an MBE, and therefore it's an education for me to be able to nominate somebody else.
Yeah. So, and I get it that people, I think it's not necessarily for them. I mean, Lee, you deal with a lot of people who have come from backgrounds that, and we're not talking about people restricted to any particular ethnic minority. People who come from backgrounds that the honours system must seem a million miles away from. And what do you think about why people don't nominate?
Well, I share. It's great to be on this panel because I feel like it's always good to be with people that I really relate to, and I think we're all. And it's great that Carl is on the committee, by the way, because one of my worries was who's on the committees. To be honest with you, and but we all, even though we all look successful, I suspect we all lack a bit what academics would call cultural capital. Part of that is feeling entitled enough to nominate people. I have to tell you, I haven't nominated anyone, which makes me feel embarrassed, to be honest with you. But I have.
It's all right.
I have some people have asked me for supporting letters, which I have done, and even then, it hasn't prompted me. Oh, maybe I should be doing this. And I suspect all of us have been on quite a long journey from where we came from originally, and we still haven't caught up in that sense of entitlement. You know, that I should put. It's really interesting hearing that actually from everyone.
Do you know, I never nominated anybody until I was a recipient. And the thing I would say to everybody out there, including my panelists, is that, you know, anyone can nominate, absolutely anybody. And I think it's worth us talking a little bit about the process, because actually some of you may, on the panel, may not even know this, let alone the people listening to us, that the process is that you know, nominations come forward, they come forward to the Cabinet Office, the Cabinet Office look at them and research them, and when I say research them, they go back into the community. They particularly ask, every county in the country has a Lord Lieutenant, they ask that. They also ask government departments who may be aware of this person's work, if they have comments and so on. So it's sort of like extra work on top of the work that's already been done on the nomination. And when you nominate somebody, it's not a massive form. And actually, as Lem says, though, it's going out and finding, if you want to nominate somebody for their great work in a particular community, it's about going out and finding somebody in that community who can write a supporting letter, like the one that Lee has just mentioned that he's done. But then the Cabinet Office do lots of extra work and really in the round get external feedback and so forth. And then the nomination, if it proceeds at that point, then comes before a 9 different committees, depending on whether it's coming from the business community or the voluntary sector or education, or etc., and science and technology. We have 9 committees that cover the you know, between them. The Cabinet Office decide which is the most suitable committee, and sometimes it goes to more than one committee, by the way. And then after we've all sat and met and made our recommendations, it then goes to a main committee that's made up of all of the chairs of the 9 committees, and then after that it goes to number 10, and who put their input in if they have any, and then it goes off to the Queen, who at that point I can tell you doesn't change anything, but she likes to see it before it's published. And that's and then of course and members of the royal family see it the day before it's published, and I know that because you'll find that members of the royal family, if some of their charities, for instance, if someone's been honoured in one of their charities, they will write a letter which will get there astonishingly quickly if they haven't seen it before the night, so they clearly see it the night before. But I think it's that kind of process, but it starts the you know, if you don't put it up there, it's not coming down, kind of thing. If no one nominates, none of that can happen, because no one's going out there looking. You know, we're going out there and encouraging nominations, but it's not like there's a nominations department that's going out there making nominations. So it really, I think all of us, and certainly I've been very conscious of it, a bit like Carly was saying. You know, when you are honoured and you realise what it means for the people around you, you think, golly, there are lots of people out there who've done much better things than me. I think I ought to get out there and raise the visibility of those people. Well,
can I just challenge you a little bit, Heather? Well, the one thing that I have got a chip on my shoulder, I do realise this, but I would say when you look at the knighthood, so all of us have done well. I mean, I'd agree, we're all proud to have honours. The studies that I've been involved in, if you look at the ones that get the really high honours, I have to say they are still from very privileged backgrounds. And I think unless you start acknowledging people like us and others at that higher level, I don't think it's going to send the signals to everyone else. So that's one of my, a lot of studies, and in social mobility, the study I do, often, it's less privileged people get these sort of slightly lower grades, basically, and it's seen as progress. But unless you get the really top, that would be my challenge, I think, to everyone in this, is are we rewarding those people, particularly those people who've had a long journey from where they came from, which I think sometimes gets overlooked. But anyway, that would be my challenge.
No, again, I'm going to ask Carly to comment on that, actually, because she's a member of the Honours Committee and she knows about this. So the first thing to know is that there are quotas. So there's a certain number of each committee has a certain number of higher honours it can make, which is a very small number, and then it sort of works its way down to how many, and and there are very key guidelines, and it's about, has this person made an impact at this level, this level, this level, or the national level, or the international level, and so on. And so at the level, it's not about who's a better person than somebody else or who's whatever. It's about that. And I think that the issue about social mobility is, of course, as we all know, is that unless you if you look at who is making national and international impact in a big way, certainly if you're looking in my committee, in the business committee, those people are people who probably had a great privilege at the beginning, because and so they got off to a rocket fuel start. And but if you look at things like the sports committee, and I'm sorry Donna is not here, the people with the higher honours on the sports committee probably did not have any privileges. They've got there because they've gone a different route, and we've knighted a lot of our gold medalists, for instance, and they've almost certainly not come from, in many cases, very privileged backgrounds at all. So it really depends the level of impact. That's the guidance you're given on the committee, but it's a very good challenge. Carly, do you want to contribute to this, and particularly, would you like to share whether you've ever nominated anybody, and then address some of the comments that have been made about about why people don't nominate?
Okay, so I have nominated before I was on the committee, and I'll be honest with you, my nominations weren't very good, because I'm very good at just thinking, I know this, therefore somebody else knows this. I write a couple of sentences. So since my time actually being on the committee and the Cabinet Office, we have now the new honours system website, whereas before you could probably pop into Google, nominate someone for an honour, and it would come up. Now there's an actual honours website that will pop up. On there is easy read for somebody that wants to nominate, which is great for people with disabilities, particularly if they want to recognise someone that supported them in the community for many years. So there is easy read now, and I do rely on that myself. I think that's probably a hurdle for people coming forward, is thinking, oh, not only that kind of imposter syndrome, but is this going to be really tricky for me to do? I'm going to be honest with you, I do not like forms. So luckily there is easy read there. And that's been really quite evident when we're looking at statistics. We had 2019, I think we were at 4% of disabled people being recognised. Had a all-time spike in the last New Year's Eve honours, which was 15.3%. It's gone down slightly to 9.3% for the Jubilee birthday list. But a lot of that is to do, actually, disability is one of the hardest statistics to get, because is the person nominating this person, do they consider them disabled? Particularly if we're thinking about hidden disabilities. And then when we're doing the kind of diversity checks for disability from the disabled person themselves, do they consider themselves disabled? I do, but not everybody uses that word. So it's really tricky to get a nice round figure on that. It is very tricky indeed. But with the kind of thinking of, as Lee said, with the social mobility, as a committee member, yes, there are very, very limited spaces for kind of the top honours, and there are quite helpful guidelines around, is this national, is it local, how many years? But I really agree with you on the fact that, let's say somebody has, I don't know, donated lots and lots of money to a certain charity, that's great, but that's relative, because if that person is a billionaire, to them that's the same as me putting £1 in a charity box down the pub. So it's all relative. So I try to see somebody's starting points as opposed, and consider that the impact of that as well on the individual, and that's really quite important. So it's kind of looking at the hands-on efforts within the community, not just, although philanthropy is incredibly important, but that's to one side. What's that person actually done? How much time has been spent? What have they done for other people? And a real hands-on approach, be that nationally, internationally, locally, grassroots. That's really important to me.
Well, Lem, can I come back to you at this point? Because one of the things that we've we briefly touched on, of course, is the fact that some people might not want to accept their honour, and you talked about the fact that when you were considering that, you wrote a blog about it and sought other people's views. Actually, only 2%. You say you know as many people have turned it down as accepted, but actually only 2% of people turn down an honour. Interestingly, it is, quite often in certain parts of the community, but it is only 2%. So I just wondered if you have any thoughts about how we could encourage more people to nominate and accept particularly in the communities that you are very familiar with. And so I need someone to take you off mute.
Which is the community of the arts. That's my community, and there are
and that is the community where I would say we have the highest refusals. As I said, it's 2% above across the board, which is probably lower than people think. But
in my community, if you get highest refusals in that, it stands to reason that I might know a few people who've turned them down, and I might be over exaggerating as well. Actually, in that, it's just it's just that seems apparent to me.
But is this something we could do practically?
Oh my God, no! We should just talk how wonderful it is to have it. I mean, accepting the reality that I know people who've turned it down doesn't mean to say that I don't think it's an absolutely wonderful thing. And I will tell that to people, and how it's, how it was how I was able to bring my godmother over from America and take her to Windsor Castle, and how I was able to see a soldier, a black man, as I entered the Windsor Castle with his, sword, his rifle and in his sentry box, and how the woman who interviewed me was also a person of color, and how I felt that, and how I've always felt actually that that actually diversity is I think of Prince Charles, for example, who's traveled all over the world and who has contacted and formed relationships with people from all over the world. I didn't have to do that. That's not an obligation. He's diverse in his thinking, I believe. And I might know that there are people who think otherwise, and that's fair enough. It's easy to think that way. So no, I think all we have to do is to be as positive as we are, contribute to society as we do, and be the example, to ourselves.
That's very good.
And to others.
Leon, have you thought? I mean, you've campaigned for diversity all your life and for better representation. Do you have a thought about how we might practically encourage more nominations and more people to be put other people forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to cut to the uncomfortable conversation here. The E is empire, and we can't change history, but that empire was built in a particular way that was not positive for many people around the world. Many people have benefited from the empire, but some people are still living a legacy of not benefiting from that empire. So we can't change history, but we can change words. So I wonder what would happen if we changed the E to something else that was more inclusive and more representative. And I don't know what that word is, but I think it would be an interesting conversation and a progressive conversation that should be considered. And I would love to see how that would turn around this 2%, which is actually a lot lower than I thought, actually, to be completely honest. It's really interesting to know that. But, it'd be great if that was 0%, because I would love to see everybody who has offered one of these things, accept it, because my experience has been entirely positive. There's a reason why I would accept an award like this. What do I do with it? I've been put here by various members of my community. If people don't turn up to your events, if people don't, engage with what you're doing, if people don't get behind the work you're doing, then you'll just be one person sat in a room, you're in your position because people have followed you and believed in what you're talking about, and you've amplified things in the right way. You're not going to get everything right, but you've done enough things to make an impact. But I would really love us to get to a position where we have an adult conversation around the E within this. I think that would be a really progressive thing to do, and I think that's where society is now. Actually, if you go out into society and listen to people, listen to our communities.
Well, at the moment, there are no plans to change the name of the order because it's governed by statute, and that that right now there isn't a plan to do it. But I think the work we can do in the meantime to improve diversity is really important. I mean, we've had a question from our audience saying that somebody leads on honours nominations for their team. There are organisations. I mean, in my own university, we consider putting forward. We have 3,000 members of staff. We consider putting people forward, and so this is a question from somebody who obviously is regularly looking at who to nominate, and keen. Are there any quick wins? I will volunteer something here, and again, actually, Leon, you might want to comment on the back of this. I have found that actually there are, for instance, lots of organisations that support minority people within communities. I'm thinking about things like the British Asian Businesswoman of the Year award, the there are black lists where they exist, not just the football one. There are communities of people from different ethnic minorities where I have found my quick win is to go into those communities and say, have you ever thought about nominating who's won your award recently? Who could we put through? Would you agree with that? And Leon as well?
This has been really useful for me, okay? Because I'm going to do stuff after this. This has actually made me go, Lem, you need to get your stuff together, and you need to, every 2 months, consider it every 3 months, every 4 months, whatever. But I need to do something, and I thank you for that, Heather. This has been really useful for me. Bit off message there, I think, possibly, but
no, at all. There's no such thing as on message.
Heather, I just want to add to that, Lem. I feel the same. I feel after I've learned something on this conversation, which I wasn't expecting, to be honest with you. And I think all of us probably think we're the same people we were when we started, and yet we've all become people that we should use that platform to give back to others. And that's something I hadn't really thought through.
I think, and my suggestion that people, to answer the question we had from Gemma W about go into other people's communities and ask them for recommendations. I mean, I think that's I actually spent a very happy hour looking literally through the internet to find out where, because I struggle with business nominations, because that's the committee I sit on, looking for communities of business people in minority backgrounds, and so on, and actually thinking about social mobility as well. Quite often people who are successful in business will then give interviews where they talk about the fact that they didn't go to university, or that they were the first person in their family to go to university, or whatever. So it is a bit of detective work, but I agree. I think we all have a responsibility, those of us who have been honoured, to use our platform to lift up others. I might just go to our last question, which is about from Daniel, who is talking about imposter syndrome is a recurring theme amongst recipients. We've also probably recurred it between us panelists here. Can more be done to reduce it as a barrier? I think the imposter syndrome is about people. People don't self-nominate. I mean, I think that would be wrong. I think that the truth is, where imposter syndrome comes into play is when you get nominated and you get that letter, and then you think, I don't deserve this, and actually and I think the thing to remember then is a bit like what you said, Carly, that where I bet you when you got your investiture, every autistic person that you had campaigned for felt like they were getting it too.
I was very lucky, Heather. I had some really lovely cards, and many of those were handmade by some autistic teen girls or young women I'd supported. And one young girl kind of did like a superhero outfit with the MBE on, and another one knows that one of my favourite films is Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and made me a golden ticket saying, "You've got the golden ticket for us." Yeah, I'm gonna cry thinking about it. I still got it in my office on the wall, and that's how it felt. It felt like the golden ticket, not for me, but for you know. In the end, Charlie brings the whole family, and I'm gonna get emotional thinking about it because it still gets me. So that's we need to be handing out some more golden tickets, don't we?
Well, thank you all for joining me and sharing your experiences and thoughts today. And thank you to my audience or our audience for taking the time to join today's session. There are, of course, sessions throughout the week, and hopefully we've posted into the chat where some of those other sessions might be happening. As into the chat, also the Cabinet Office have pointed their email address if you've got any questions or would like to ask more questions. And please do visit the government website that Carly mentioned, which is so much better than it used to be. Well, first of all, it exists, and secondly, it's very good thanks to input of people like Carly, which is honours.cabinetoffice.gov.uk. And there are lots more honours events happening today and tomorrow, which you can reach through the Eventbrite page. And finally, to my panelists and to my audience, remember, please, if you even think about it, do something amazing for somebody amazing. Please nominate. We would love to have more nominations from underrepresented parts of the community, underrepresented geographically, underrepresented by diversity of thought, underrepresented by ethnic minority. It doesn't matter what level of underrepresentation, we would love to have your nominations.
Great.
So thank you, everybody. It was great to meet everybody. And I look forward, hopefully, to meeting you all again at some future point. Thanks.
Thank you, Heather. Thanks, everybody.